Hello, welcome to Scott's Odyssey. Did you ever go to a historic national park and look at some of the monuments they have scattered about and wonder, what was that for? Or why was that one made? Well, regardless of your answer, mine is all the frickin' time. And this particular monument is one that has a great story. So I'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. If you've watched my videos before, thank you for your patronage, and if you're new to Scott's Odyssey, welcome aboard. Just a moment ago I stated all the frickin' time, and for those of you who were not raised in a family with heavy Irish cultural influences, I felt it was necessary to take a moment and give you a quick explanation about the word frickin'. The word frickin' is a common American Irish slang word used as an adjective meaning extremely or excessively. Many think it's a replacement expletive for the infamous F word, but that would not be frickin', that would be feckin'. Okay, on to this location. Need to let you know if I slur my words, it's because my face is frozen up here on the hill. It's a nice little 10-mile-an-hour breeze, and it's 20 degrees in the middle of January, so yeah, it's cold out here. I am currently at Gettysburg National Military Park. I politely request that if you are a Civil War history buff, while I appreciate how much you know, this is not Facebook, nor a place for you to leave a pedantic comment regarding this video that I will ultimately be turning into a funny troll and you will be made an example of over on Instagram. So, you see my back right here? Right here. Just get up off that right now and we can continue learning something interestingly odd about this site. With that out of the way, one of the things I love about these sites, aside from the fact that we have kept hallowed many a war site in our country, albeit more often than not turning it into a money-making machine in the process, are all the monuments that get erected with dedications, but no stories to the dedication. Here we are at the Trousseau Farm, one of the just outside of Gettysburg locations shared with Plum Run in the actual Battle of Gettysburg. Now, there are a lot of historians who like to talk about the tactical and warfaring militaristic opportunities both used and unused throughout that war. I'm not one of them. I appreciate all of those aspects, but I'm not one for being an armchair historian or, as stated by my stepson, the Sunday morning quarterback when it comes to discussing the history of the Civil War. For me, there are facts and there are truths, and the only one difficult to discern is the truth. Today we're looking at the monument in the shape of a diamond representing the 3rd Army Corps diamond under the command of Major General Daniel Edgar Sickles. Hence the name of this monument as the Sickles Monument. And that's it. No, really, it's this stone, and what it says is Major General Daniel E. Sickles, wounded July 2nd, 1853. Now, to dig into why this stone is here, what Sickles was known for, and what is the importance of this wound. Daniel Sickles was born out of New York City in 1819 and received higher education at New York University to become a lawyer, which led to becoming a politician. He was very opinionated and rather conservative, garnering him membership into the Democratic Tammany Hall machine, more often referred to as the Society of St. Tammany, and sometimes even the Sons of St. Tammany or the Columbian Order. The Tammany Hall machine was a Democratic Party in New York City and state that focused on helping immigrants, mostly Irish, rise in positions of political and societal heights from the 1790s and into the 1960s. After 1854, the society further refined their constituent base in what was referred to as the Democratic Republican Party. This party was renowned for the political corruption and the use of politicians' authority for personal gain and wealth accumulation. Not in this video, but maybe in a future video we will visit how the Tammany Society was also all about being pure Americans, even though there is this cultural appropriations of naming themselves after Chief Tamanend, calling their meeting hall a wigwam, and the leader of their society being referred to as the Grand Sachem, a title reserved for the highest leader of the 5 tribes that made up the Algonquins. Back to Dan Sickles. As described previously, Sickles became politically affluent and went on to become a New York State Senator from 1857 to 1861. Daniel Sickles was a major in the 12th Regiment of the New York Militia, and in 1856 became well known internationally by causing a diplomatic scandal while serving in London due to an incident of wearing his militia uniform during a ceremony and snubbing Queen Victoria at an Independence Day celebration. During his time as senator, Daniel's wife, Teresa Baggioli Sickles, decided to have a side-fling affair with none other than Francis Scott Key's son and nephew to Roger B. Taney, who was currently the Federalist Supreme Court Justice. Needless to say, Senator Sickles was not exactly delighted with this situation when he received a poison pen letter, or a letter from someone with unpleasant and malicious accusations. Eventually, Teresa came clean about the affair, and Daniel had his wife write out her confession on paper. On February 27th of 1859, Philip Barton Key II was sitting on a bench in Lafayette Square, just outside of Sickles' home and directly across from the White House. Daniel Sickles approached Philip, allegedly stating, "You villain, you have dishonored my house and you must die." Then, well, he shot him dead. Sickles then went to the house of his close friend Jeremiah Black, the current Attorney General, and later turned himself over to the constable with confession of the murder. On a, if you will, key note of historical value, Senator Sickles was acquitted of the murder under the first use of the plea known as temporary insanity, claiming it was a crime of passion. He then forgave his wife and brought her back into his home, making the public statement that, "I am not aware of any statute or code of morals which make it infamous to forgive a woman. I shall strive to prove to all that an erring wife and mother may be forgiven and redeemed," an act that absolutely destroyed his public image, especially because he was already well known for his own flings with New York prostitute Fanny White. Although Teresa becomes a footnote in history at this point, I think it's important to add to the story that the two of them never were reconciled, and Teresa died alone in 1867 at 31 years of age with a destroyed reputation. Senator Sickles sought to fix his public image by setting up a campaign to raise volunteer units in New York for the Union Army. Because of his existing militia position, he was promoted to colonel of the 70th New York Infantry, one of the 4 regiments he organized during his campaign for volunteers. In September of 1861, he received another promotion to Brigadier General of Volunteers, which was comprised of the 70th, 71st, 72nd, 73rd, and 74th New York Volunteer Infantry Regiments, referred to as the Excelsior Brigade. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this man's accolades and merits while he served the Union. His history is long and full of valiant efforts of might and heart, as well as tumultuous amounts of scandal and congressional abuse of authority. In the end, you just have a man who did what he wanted to do and spent a lot of time and effort in rehabilitating his reputation on every occasion. And his efforts in the Civil War were no different. In 1862, Congress forced him to relinquish his command, but through lobby of his fellow constituents was able to get his rank and command back just 2 months later. At this point, he was known as a shill of a commander, especially because he was the only Corps commander who did not have a West Point military education and was constantly questioning the authority of his superiors, something Major General George Meade was very, let's say, annoyed about. Fortunately for Sickles, it is stated he led fearlessly and successfully in the Battle of Seven Pines and the 7 Days Battle, as well as doing a really good job protecting the capital city. But again, with a reputation of constantly rehabilitating his reputation, it might be prudent to point out that post-war, Sickles spent a lot of time polishing his image as a commanding officer during the Civil War and correcting what he deemed inaccurate in news articles and books. Jumping back to the Civil War, Gettysburg, and this specific location. As I stated earlier, we are here at the monument of Daniel Sickles' injury site with the symbol of the 3rd Corps diamond on top. On July 2nd of 1863, the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg, Major General George Gordon Meade ordered Sickles' corps to take up a defensive position on the south end of Cemetery Ridge. Sickles did not like his position being on a lower position of a peach orchard hill in front of him, most likely due to his former experience of being on the wrong end of a battery barrage in a gully just a short time earlier. So Sickles went to the Trossel farm at the peach orchard and had the family evacuate their home under the threat of a dangerous onslaught coming their way. He then used the Trossel home as his own personal outpost. It's interesting that Daniel Sickles essentially lied to the Trossel family regarding the dangers they were in at this location, especially because the Battle of Gettysburg would have been a mile or more north of this farm if he didn't disobey orders. At the end of the war, Catherine Trossel, who owned the farm with her husband and 9 children, filed claims against the U.S. government for the damages to their property, including the leaving behind 16 dead horses on the front lawn, as well as hundreds of other dead horses scattered across their farmland. The U.S. government, even during their post-war Reparations Act, turned down the Trossels' request. The downside is he was directly disobeying Meade's orders and a mile further south from Cemetery Ridge than he was supposed to be, creating a situation that fully diluted the Union forces and created a huge gap between his corps and Meade's Army of the Potomac. An hour after Sickles executed this decision, Meade called a meeting of all corps commanders, of which Sickles arrived just as the meeting ended. Meade rode with Sickles back to this position and told Sickles of the gap created, informed him to withdraw, to which Sickles refused. Just as this conversation was happening, the Confederates attacked and Meade withdrew to his headquarters. Confederate Lieutenant General James Longstreet's corps destroyed the 3rd Corps, rendering them absolutely useless. Now, the armchair discussion goes back and forth with claims that Sickles' move lengthened the Battle of Gettysburg's success, and the opposing view states that Sickles' blunder broke the Confederates' ability to break the Union line. Either way, Meade had to bring his corps down to save Sickles' corps. During the beginning of Longstreet's attack on Sickles, Daniel Sickles was wounded by a 12-pound cannonball that absolutely mangled his right lower leg. He was taken into the farmhouse where a tourniquet was applied to his leg, and he gave his final order to have General Birney take command. Being a man of image, while he was gurneyed off the battlefield, he was smoking a cigar while grinning away at the soldiers in order to keep their spirits high. Later that day, Sickles' leg was amputated above the knee. Instead of being moved to a hospital, he demanded he be immediately taken to Washington, D.C. His reasoning was discovered on July 4th, when he was the first to bring news of the Union victory and then immediately began to defend his behavior in the conflict. Sickles was visited by President Lincoln and his son on July 5th. To further his investment to managing the narrative, Sickles was aware of a directive from the Army Surgeon General to collect and forward specimens of morbid anatomy along with projectiles and foreign bodies removed to the Army Medical Museum in Washington, D.C. So he took his amputated leg and donated it to the museum in a small coffin-shaped box with a card that said, "With the compliments of Major General D.E.S." Sickles allegedly visited this leg every year thereafter on its anniversary of amputation, and yes, the National Museum of Health and Medicine still have what is left of his leg on display. After the Battle of Gettysburg, Sickles spent a lot of time and effort doing what a devout member of the Tammany Society would do, and that's run a campaign to sodden General Meade's character. Sickles believed that he was the reason and deserved the credit for winning the Battle of Gettysburg, and that Meade was wronging him for personal reasons. How's that for gaslighting? His accusations went so far as to say Meade was going to retreat from Gettysburg on July 1st. His other claims were that it was his corps that occupied Little Round Top on July 2nd. Believe it or not, even though his actions were in the face of everything the Union Army and West Point military stood for, because of his rambunctious allegations, Sickles received the Medal of Honor for his actions, albeit 34 years later. The citation read, "Displayed most conspicuously conspicuous gallantry on the field, vigorously contesting the advance of the enemy and continuing to encourage his troops after being himself severely wounded. And that is the story of the man for why this monument stands here on this spot today. Now, what happened to good old Sickles? He went on in the Army until the end of the war, but not in a combat role, which led to him trying to slander Lieutenant General Ulysses S. Grant for not allowing him back in combat command. After the Civil War concluded, Sickles was sent on the special mission to the South American republics to secure their compliance with the 1846 treaty to convey troops across the Isthmus of Panama. He was then sent to the Carolinas to help the South rebuild damages post-war, pushing for the doctrine of fair treatment for African Americans. In 1869, he served as the U.S. Minister to Spain, in which he almost started a war with the inaccurate information he relayed back to the U.S., while touting subjects such as child virgins for the purpose of prostitution, all while having an affair with Queen Isabel II and marrying one of her younger attendants. Need we go any further? One last interesting truth that is hard to nail down on facts is stated that in 1888, at the 25th Grand Reunion, a reunion of those who served on both sides of the Civil War, that Sickles and Longstreet met up with each other, and Sickles, with all his audacity, said, "You know, you never apologized for taking my leg." To which Longstreet replied, "You're lucky I left you one to stand on." Sickles went on to be a big asset on preserving the Gettysburg battlefield and sponsoring the Gettysburg National Military Park, as well as erecting all these monuments. Oddly enough, all of the principal senior generals who fought in the Battle of Gettysburg have a monument with a memorialized statue of the general, all except Sickles himself. When asked why, Sickles allegedly responded that the entire battlefield is a memorial to Dan Sickles. If you like this video on what this monument's all about and would like to see more stories like this one, leave me a comment below. There are many monuments here in the Gettysburg area that have stories similar to this one and other secrets that they hold in their designs. I hope you like the story of Daniel Sickles' monument stone to the location where his leg was wounded. Don't forget, jump out to Patreon or PayPal and help support the Odyssey continue these adventures. As always, I thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.